Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Tony, how long did it take you from the time you first thought about buying rentals till you actually purchased your first property?
I think it took about 5 to 7 years before I finally pulled the trigger.
So what was holding you back? Was it just fear?
A couple things. So I grew up a bit poor. So for me, money, I've had a weird relationship with money, I'd say my whole life, really. Because we didn't have much growing up, I thought I needed to have like a huge nest egg or just a bunch of money before I actually got started in this. And for me, it was kind of that security of being like, okay, if this doesn't work out, if I have to pay my tuition and lose money on deals or what have you, I'm going to be totally okay. So yes, fear is the ultimate, that is the answer. However, it was just kind of surrounding. It's not that I was afraid to do it in the sense that, hey, here's how you do a deal, et cetera. It was, hey, if I mess up pretty bad, which does happen, I don't want to basically lose all my money and be going negative and having to get a loan to basically pay myself back. So that's kind of, fear was the ultimate reason. Being
on the other side of it, do you wish that you had started sooner?
Oh my God, yes. But I think you say that with a lot of things, right? In hindsight, 2020, if I knew what I know now, which I think a lot of experienced people say, absolutely. I would have started when I was 18. I would have bought a house and house hacked and taken it from there. And that's what I tell my nieces and nephew right now. So absolutely, I would have started the moment I was legally able to buy a property.
Tony's been buying rental properties now for 2 years. And over the last 2 years, he's bought 9 properties. So on the show today, we're going to figure out how he's been finding deals, how he's financing them. We'll talk about some challenges that he's faced and how he's overcome them. And we're also going to talk about a unique advantage that Tony has. His day job is working for a property management company. So we'll figure out how that experience has helped him become a better investor. Joining us on the show today from Baltimore, Maryland is Tony Cook. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Tony. I've had tenants that have either broken their leases or stopped paying rent, and I'm sure you know that this can be very expensive. It's very easy for the cost to exceed the amount of money that you're holding for a security deposit. And because of this risk, I started using the Guarantors to guarantee my leases. The Guarantors protects your rental income against rent defaults, vacancy loss, lease breaks, holdovers, and more. And this is all at no cost to you. Your tenants pay for the insurance premium. If you want to learn more about their platform, check out my bonus episode from September 15th, 2022. It's titled, Is This Better Than a Security Deposit? If you're ready to sign up, you can enroll within minutes by visiting theguarantors.com. Again, that's theguarantors.com. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property, and when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Tony, for someone that had so much fear about getting started, once you got over the fear, you really did a lot. In the last 2 years, you bought 9 properties.
Yeah, I would say I came out of the gate very strong and bought 6 of them in the first 5 months. And then the last, year and a half or so, I haven't bought as many. And it's not because I don't want to. It's just kind of how the cards have been dealt. But yeah, I definitely came out pretty strong.
Is it just harder finding deals?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. So, I've got an 18-month-old now. So, balancing full-time job with the baby, trying to maintain a house, and then also investing in real estate. I feel like if you do real estate right, it's not like an easy, quick thing. You got to develop relationships and get your funnel and all that. So, yeah, it's been a matter of prioritizing my time and just,
Makes sense. All right. So when you were thinking about buying rental properties and kind of overanalyzing the situation, was there anything that pushed you over the edge that said, okay, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, COVID. So when COVID hit, and I'm sure a lot of people have similar stories, when it hit, I saw my stock portfolio absolutely nosedive overnight, which to me, I had been saying forever, blood on the streets is a good thing. And when it comes to the stock market, so I was excited about that. And then it rebounded, which, my portfolio almost doubled within 3 months. I'm like, this is cool. But then I'm just like looking at real estate values. And I'm seeing like even in my neighborhood and my county, like properties are just going up like crazy. And then I get my new assessment on my house and I'm like, holy smokes. I did not realize I would have made, well, not made, but my property would have went up in value by like 60 grand in like a year. I'm like, this is wild. And that kind of got me to thinking. I'm like, I need to get on this appreciation and rental income game here.
Yeah. All right. So when you started, it was after the properties had appreciated a bit after COVID?
Yeah, so COVID hits, obviously in 2020, and it took me 2 years after having that realization to actually do it. I'm just sitting here watching it and I'm like, man, I'm just analyzing property values. And for some reason I kept thinking they're going to go back down and I'm going to overpay for a property. And, I'm going to regret this and blah, blah, blah. And it was just kind of that mindset. It took 2 years after that realization to actually pull the trigger.
Yeah. So then getting started, how did you find that first deal?
So that first one came through my management company. So an owner we'd managed this property for at least 5-6 years. She put in her termination form because she wanted to sell the property. She was kind of a tired landlord. She didn't really want to deal. She didn't want to deal with the tenant stuff anymore, even though she paid us to do it. We still got to get approvals and things like that. And with this particular tenant, the tenant gets caught up, but she doesn't pay on time every month. And so the owner was finding it hard to make ends meet with her mortgage and all that jazz. She didn't want to increase the rent. So, kind of all those things played into it. But when she put in the request to terminate, I called her. So literally within 45 seconds, her phone was ringing and she was caught off guard. She's like, oh, wow, I just put that form in.
Right.
Who are you? And I was like, oh, I run the management company. I want to check in, see how things went for you the past several years. And, they went good, which was awesome. And I said, I'll tell you what. Do you have a realtor yet? Or have you listed this thing? No, I got to do my research. And I was like, why don't we just do a deal right here? And she's like, oh, we can do that. And it just kind of, the rest is history from there. We just kind of talked through numbers and she liked the idea of her tenant staying with the same management company and she thought we'd be a good fit. So she wanted a little bit more than what I paid. And, after some negotiations, we got it done.
What a great way to find deals. Out of all the interviews we've done, I don't think I've interviewed anyone that found deals from their management company. I think that's a great way to find deals. Now, do you own the management company?
I do not. I'm the COO. Nope. I've been here since, I want to say the beginning, but it's not. 2 years the company was around, started back in 2011. And I came on board 2013 and we've grown like 5 times since then.
Does the owner mind you going after his clients?
No, so that's the arrangement we have. So when they're active clients and we're managing their property, that's completely off limits. I would never do that. I've worked for the guy for 11 years now. We have a very, very good relationship, and he actually does hard money as well. So he lends me hard money for some of these deals I'm getting. So the arrangement was, hey, I'm okay with you buying property from the clients if they've already notified us that they're terminating.
Okay.
And then they stay with Bay Management Group as well. So naturally there's transparency there and he's funding the deals and everything. So there's really no,
right.
It's all above the table. It's all kosher. Everything's good.
Is that how you found all your properties?
Not all of them. Half of them were through Bay Management. The other half were through wholesalers.
Let's talk about that first deal. So how much did you end up paying for it?
$115.
$115. And so it was already rented. How much was the rent?
It was rented at $1,400, which was about $200 under market.
Okay. Have you been able to raise the rent on that?
Yep. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's either $1,600 or $1,650. It's in that ballpark.
Solid. And then for your expenses, your mortgage, taxes, insurance, how much does that come out to be?
So mortgage, tax, and insurance, let's see, I have it broken out. The mortgage and tax, mortgage, and so the P&I is going to be about 520 a month, and then taxes about 100, insurance about 80. So with those, I don't know, about $700, and then once you factor in the other expenses, it's about 1,100.
Okay, so $1,100, and you've got $1,600 a month in rent. So you've got about an extra $500 a month in cash flow.
Yep.
What are you doing with that money? Do you save it for repairs, or are you spending it?
Yeah, so when I say 1,100, that's me factoring in vacancy, capex, maintenance. Those aren't the actual expenses that I've experienced. Those were the budgeted ones. Okay. My actual expenses have been lower than that because I haven't had to do much to the property at all. So I've got set aside, and it's been occupied this whole time. So I've basically, you might as well add a couple $100 more into the equation. It's probably closer to 700. But I also realize that at a certain point, I'm going to get hit with like a $5,000 line item. So
right,
yeah.
So you're saving that money just for whenever that comes up.
Yeah. So what I do, and I know everyone kind of does this different. I put aside $8,000 for each rental property that I have. And I keep that in the business checking account. And then because I am paying the taxes and insurance myself on a lot of these properties, so I don't want to get hit with, 10 grand out of nowhere. I'm like, oh snap, I need to like wait for rent to come in to pay this.
Right.
So I have funds for each property, and I'll cap that, as I get more property. I don't know what yet, but I'll probably cap that at like 60 grand or something. But right now, yeah, there's, I don't know, 50K or something sitting there. And then what I've done with it is I've actually used it for hard money. I've loaned, even on one of the flips I'm doing right now with two of my partners, I'm funding the rehab. So I'm using it as hard money. I know this property will flip and be done in just a couple months here. So I'm willing to take that gamble to kind of float it out there and make a 12% return.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how did you come up with the $8,000 a property number?
That's a good question. I don't know. I just I know a lot of people like, I guess the first time I heard this was lenders. So a lot of lenders, at least in our market and the individuals I've spoken with, this could be very different in other places. They wanted 10K per property in an account. Mm-hmm. A couple credit unions I've worked with, a couple bigger commercial banks in the area, they wanted 10 grand per pop. And I was like, man, 10 grand just seems like a lot to me. Like I don't want that much money sitting in an account. And they, the one negotiated 8,000. I said, okay, well, I'm just going to leave that across the board, even for the properties that aren't with you. It just kind of seemed like what expense is going to be more than 8,000? Even if I did have it now, I would have a while to catch up back to the 8,000 before there was any more big hits. For example, like if you're replacing a main sewer line on a row home, it's going to be like 3,500, $4,000. So I could replace a whole line, and a roof is only going to be about $4,000, $5,000 because they're like the tar roofs. So they're super easy. So worst case scenario, I'm covered there. And then I have a high deductible insurance, which some people call me crazy for, but I like cash flow. And so even my deductible, it's enough to cover my deductible.
So what would happen, say right now, where you have the money loaned out? If something came in where, maybe you had to replace the roof and maybe you had an insurance claim, mm-hmm. If you had some big expenses, like, do you have cash set aside right now, or is everything loaned out?
Right now, I do have cash set aside. However, I live very frugally. So I only spend about 20% of my income. Okay. So I live very, very frugally. So just every 2 weeks when I get paid, I'd basically be able to just about replenish the account with that, and definitely within a month. So I kind of, the way I live, and this is another reason I waited so long, is I just wanted so much. I wanted to be able to sleep at night with really anything happening. I'm able to catch up very, very quickly just for my day job. Yeah. And then also I have a pretty big line of credit I could use. I don't have any credit card debt, but I have enough, limits in there where I could float for a month without paying interest if I needed to.
And I think another advantage you have too, working in property management, is you see what things cost. Like, so you probably know any expense that could come up, know exactly what it's going to cost.
I do. Yeah, I do. I could actually pull up a database in any of the 4 markets we're in, and I can tell you how much we pay for anything. And the cool thing is we got a lot of leverage with contractors because we give them, like, our main contractor in Baltimore gets like $600,000 a year And he's just doing like service calls for us for the most part. A door not opening, a window needs replaced. And he's making a lot of money. And so him and I have kind of an understanding of, hey, this isn't a, hey, you do this or that situation, but it's, hey, we're providing you with a crap load of work. I've got just these handful of properties. Let's not gouge here.
Right,
don't treat me like retail.
Right.
And I get pretty good rates, sometimes even better than we'd get at BMG. Just for that, kind of keeping them on board, keeping everybody happy.
Let's talk about your financing. So you mentioned that the owner of your company is lending you hard money to buy properties.
Yep.
With that first property, or for the properties that you bought from the management company that they're already rented, you have a paying tenant in there. The property doesn't need any work. Are you using hard money to buy those properties too?
This is funny. I did back in 2022. And even with all those years of just kind of reading and trying to understand, I didn't focus enough on the lending side, which is one of the things, if I were to be able to go back in time, I know 2 lenders locally that are very good at what they do. And they've explained everything there is to know about lending with qualified, non-qualified, DSCR, I'm definitely not an expert, but I've become pretty knowledgeable of these now. And back in 2022, I had no clue. I understand how to look at ROI. I understand how to manage property, how to find them. I understand the title process, all of that stuff I was pretty good with just for my research and seeing it. But the lending side, I was not. All I knew at the time in 2022 was, hey, I've got this property for $115. The tenant's paying $1,400. This is a home run. The rent's even going to go up. I need to close on this property ASAP before this owner changes their mind or before they go with an agent or what have you. And I didn't want to wait, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, however long a bank was going to take to do all of this, and then ultimately have it fall through and this owner get cold feet. So for me at the time, I went to Patrick for hard money for 2 reasons. 1, I didn't know what I was doing. 2, I just wanted to close on the property ASAP and deal with it later. That's kind of
okay.
And that's what I did. And I did that with the first 4. I bought them with hard money, and I sat on the hard money for 4 months, 5 months. And then eventually I'm just looking at my income statement each month and I'm like, I'm paying too much for financing. I'm like, this is crazy. So I went to a credit union and then got a portfolio loan to wrap those up in. And my monthly payment went down by $1,000 or something.
So with the portfolio loan, you have basically like a blanket mortgage. So there's several properties that are attached to that one loan.
Yeah, there's 4. So I brought the first 4 all through BMG. I was paying hard money and I'm like, all right, this is a lot. I'm not getting the returns I want because I'm paying with hard money. And I went to them and they said, we can do it 2 different ways. We prefer to have you work with our commercial side. And in order to do that, you got to bundle these things. You're going to get a 6% return at the time instead of, it was higher. It was like 7.5 or something. I forget. But I said, hey, I want the lower rate and the 30-year amortization schedule. So let's do that. At that time, I didn't realize that I couldn't sell these things individually without their permission. That's where another mistake I made.
Yeah, that's a big thing. So so you can't take a loan out of the portfolio loan. So if something happened and you had to sell a property, you have to refi to get those properties out. So yeah, that's kind of a negative thing. So going forward, would you do a portfolio loan again, or do you think it's better to have individual mortgages?
I think it depends on the circumstances, to be honest with you. And it's going to vary by person to person. I personally don't like restrictions. I like things to be easy. I like to be able to make decisions quick without a lot of headaches. You don't always have the best returns with that mindset, though. And so I think it just depends on your situation. Like if I knew I was going to be going into another business venture, flipping properties, or just doing kind of more than buying the rental here and there, I would not want to portfolio it. Because I would say, hey, what happens if I just want to sell one of these and then take this money and go into here and do this, but I don't want to get rid of all of them.
Right.
So I personally would probably not do the portfolio loan. It would just depend on the circumstances. And of course, the interest rate, if it was majorly different, I'd consider it. But here I am now 2 years later, and I'm wishing I hadn't done that because I would love to sell the one property that's gone up by $50,000 in 2 years as well. I'd love to pluck it out of there, sell it, and get a 4 unit, a 5 unit, or something like that, but I can't. And there's
right.
also prepay penalties.
Right.
So I've got a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 prepay penalty in my loan, and it's been 2 years now. So I'd get hit with a 3% penalty, and that loan, I want to say it's like 500,000 between the 4 properties of debt I took out. So that that times 3%, that's 15 grand out the window, and I don't really want to do that.
Yeah. So overall, it sounds like you've had a great experience so far buying rentals. It sounds like everything's gone pretty smooth. Has there been anything bad that's happened or any major expenses?
There's a lot of landmines out there. It's not just with the property and the county. I'm talking with lenders, with title companies, with insurance agents. You got to be careful who you do business with. That's been my biggest learning experience is don't just trust everybody that what they say is accurate. Do your due diligence, do your homework, and then know who to call when there's a problem. And so I've had a lot of problems. I just know who to call, thankfully.
Right. If you want to reach out to Tony, I've got his contact information on the website. And if you own property in the Baltimore area and you're looking for new property management, I've also got a link to the management company that Tony works for. You can find it all at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 462. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether it's your first property or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's got a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something that'll work for you in your situation. If you want to find out more, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. If you love the podcast and you want to support us and help us grow, there's 2 things you could do that would really help a lot. The first one is share the show. Share it on social media. Tell a friend. Tell anyone that you think might enjoy the show. Tell them to listen. Forward them the show. And let them know about it. And the second thing is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps with the algorithm and helps us reach new people. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for listening. I'll be back with a new episode next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.